Thank you.
Please.
Okay, good morning to everyone. I would like to thank the organizers, especially Father Volodymyr, for the invitation to join this quite important meeting. And also on behalf of the Volynska Academy for Theological Studies in Greece, I would like to express our support to the Ukrainian people at the Autokephalous Orthodox Church there during this quite critical situation, the war situation. Let's turn now to my topic, which is the declaration against the Russian world, russkíý mír, the prophetic voice of the church in practice. The completely unjustified Russian invasion of Ukraine, started on February 24, was to provoke tectonic changes and turmoil to our globe, as we used to know it, since the Second World War. One can simply refer here to the thousands of victims, civilians and soldiers, as well as to the catastrophe of the Ukrainian urban infrastructure from a local point of view, as well as the ensuing environmental and food crisis, along with the energy crisis, the refugee flows, the global rise of the cost of life, and the commodity prices, followed by a serious impact on the global economic development, the impoverishment of degradation of entire populations. It is definitely a historic event, fully unexpected, that changed the way one understands the world. But what is the background of this kind of russkíý mír ideology? The Russian invasion of Ukraine, however, did not come out of the blue. If one limits oneself only to the political, economic, military, or diplomatic dimension of the invasion, there is a danger to lose the whole picture. The Russian invasion holds also, to a great extent, an ecclesiastical dimension, which is not always profound or taken into account. In this regard, one should carefully take into consideration the still existent break of the intercommunion between Moscow and Constantinople patriarchates as a result of the granting by the latter in 2018 of the autocephaly status to the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, as well as the recent establishment of a Russian exarchate in Africa, which already have provoked serious problems to the Patriarchate of Alexandria. These were some of the aggressive actions undertaken by the leading team of the Moscow Patriarchate that targeted the very unity of the Orthodox Church in general, and the pioneer role of the Ecumenical Patriarchate in particular, a reality which needs to be seen even indirectly as a preliminary phase of the later military invasion of Ukraine. Having said this, one would have clearly anticipated the reaction on the side of the Moscow Patriarchate against Putin's decision to invade in Ukraine under the pretext that Russia is under attack by NATO or more generally by the West. Hence, it did not come as a surprise that the Russian hierarchy has refused to acknowledge even the profound reality of the invasion, not to say the killing of many innocent victims or the humanistic and environmental catastrophe which take place. On the contrary, it has issued official statements in favor of a neutral peace language in light of, quote, events and hostilities, end of quote, in Ukraine, while at the same time it blamed the hostilities on the corrupted West, which through globalization and liberalism threat the purity and the very existence of Orthodox Christianity, of which Russia has been self-declared as its guardian. If one looks closer to the support offered by the hierarchy of the Moscow Patriarchate for President Vladimir Putin's war against Ukraine, one would soon realize the background ideology that seeks to justify this unholy war. We are referred here to the well-known russkíý mír, or the Russian world ideology, a false teaching which mixes certain ideological, national, and religious aspects to justify the leading role that Russia is called to play as the alleged sole and pure Orthodox nation today. It is an ideology gradually developed over the last 20 years and more concrete since the enthronement of the Patriarch Kirill at the Moscow throne and the election of President Vladimir Putin. Since their election, with the help of their propagandists Alexander Dunkin and Metropolitan Ilarion Alfeyev, respectively, they closely cooperated towards the construction of such an ideology, which meant to gradually lead to the implementation of the russkii mir by the conquest of Ukraine. In 2014, when Russia annexed the Crimea and initiated a proxy war in the Donbas area of Ukraine, right up until the beginning of the present war against Ukraine, the Russian president and the Patriarch have used Russian world ideology as a principal justification for the invasion. In brief, the Russian world teaching states, quote, that there is a transnational Russian sphere or civilization called Holy Russia or Holy Rus, which includes Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus, and sometimes Moldova and Kazakhstan, as well as ethnic Russians and Russian-speaking people throughout the world, end of quote. This Russian world has shared a common political center, Moscow, a common spiritual center, Kiev, as the mother of all Rus, a common language, Russian, a common church, of course, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Moscow Patriarchate, and a common patriarch, the Patriarch of Moscow, who works in symphonia with a common president, national leader, in our case, Vladimir Putin, to govern this whole Russian world. The opponent, to the Russian world is the corrupt West, as represented by United States and European Union, but also those Orthodox churches, like especially the Ecumenical Patriarchate, which through liberal democracy, globalization, the ecumenical and open dialogue with other traditions and cultures, as well as the human rights language, appear to threat, according to the Russian propaganda, the Orthodox tradition, as it has been preserved by the Russian cultural spirit. But what is this declaration against the Russian world? Against such a catastrophic ideology, a considerable number of leading Orthodox theologians, some of them are joining this meeting, from all over the world, raised their stature and by issuing a strong statement against the teaching of the Russian world, they fully rejected this heretical view and, quote, the shameful actions of the government of Russia in unleashing war against Ukraine, which flows from this vile and indefensible teaching, with the connivance of the Russian Orthodox Church as profoundly unorthodox, unchristian, and against humanity, end of quote. Such a strong move recalled a similar reaction taking place during the Second World War by certain German theologians, like the famous one, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who, by issuing the so-called Barmen Declaration in 1934, namely a document adopted by Christians in Nazi Germany, they clearly opposed the then German Christian movement, who tried to justify the Nazi regime by abusing the gospel for its own sake. That text became the major confessional document of the so-called confessing church of that time. In a similar vein, the declaration against the teaching of the russkii mir aims to denounce the abuse of the gospel by an ethnophiletist ideology in order to justify the expansive aspirations of Putin's and Kirill's totalitarian regime. Based on a well-grounded biblical and patristic argumentation, the declaration includes the following 6 theses. First, the condemnation as non-Orthodox at the rejection of any teaching that seeks to replace the kingdom of God with a kingdom of this world, be that of Holy Rus, sacred Byzantium, or any other earthly kingdom. Second, the condemnation as non-Orthodox at the rejection of any teaching which would subordinate the kingdom of God to any kingdom of this world. The rejection of all forms of government that deify the state, theocracy, and absorb the church. Any form of Kesseropapism, replacing their ultimate obedience to the crucified and resurrected Lord with that of any leader vested with ruling powers and claiming to be God's anointed, whether known by the title of Caesar, Emperor, Tsar, or President. Third, the condemnation as non-Orthodox at the rejection of any teaching that attributes divine establishment or authority, special sacredness or purity to any single local, national, or ethnic identity, or characterizes any particular culture as special or divinely ordained, whether Greek, Romanian, Russian, Ukraine, or any other. Fourth, the condemnation as non-Orthodox and the rejection of any teaching that encourages division, mistrust, hatred, and violence among people, religions, confessions, nations, or states. The condemnation as non-Orthodox and the rejection of any teaching that demonizes or encourages the demonization of those that the state or society deems other, including foreigners, political and religious dissenters, and other stigmatized social minorities. The rejection of any Manichaean Gnostic division that would elevate a wholly Orthodox Eastern culture and its Orthodox peoples above a debased and immoral West. Fifth, the condemnation as non-Orthodox and rejection of any promotion of spiritual quietism among the faithful and clergy of the Church, from the highest patriarch down to the most humble layperson. And sixth, the condemnation as non-Orthodox and the rejection of any teaching or action which refuses to speak the truth or actively suppresses the truth about evils that are perpetrated against the gospel of Christ in Ukraine. Since its issuing on March 13 of this year, the declaration has been welcomed and signed by a considerable number of Orthodox and non-Orthodox scholars, lay people and clergy coming from different parts of the world, representing various ecclesiastical contexts and backgrounds. It goes without saying that this declaration represents the prophetic dimension of Orthodox Church theology at its best, a dimension badly needed in our turbulent era. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Anyone have a question? While everyone is thinking, I have a first question. What is the danger of the Russian world for Greece and the Greece Church? Have you danger?
Very good question. It seems that the Russian Patriarchate would like to create at some point in the future an exarchate in Greece in order through this kind of development to press to put more pressure on the Church of Greece in order to, let's say, to be more neutral in its policy against the Russian world in this kind of things. So I think that there is a real danger, but at the same time, the Russian patriarchate has I would say, a great deal of influence on certain metropolitans of the Church of Greece, and of course, certain big monasteries in Mount Athos as well. But this is not actually, this is not something that should make the Orthodox Church in Greece to change its stance against the Ukrainians or the other Orthodox Church that has already condemned the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We need to insist to resist in this ecclesiastical invasion. That is what we are going to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Question of Natalia Vasilievich.
Yeah, I would like to ask you, Nikos, thank you for coming here and thank you for your presentation. I remember that last year, I think ethos project had a series of lectures about the document for the life of the world. And one of the issues which was the most hotly debated during the discussions about the document was the issue of ethnophilitism. And it was this idea that ethnophilitism is heresy and should be condemned, got a lot of critical sentiments from the side of Ukrainians, and especially because this is something which was used against the Ukrainian nation, against the Ukrainian church as an autocephalous church, because this ethnophilitism was applied to reject the national identity of Ukrainians and the national identity and seeking the national church. How do you think this the very concept of ethnophilitism, is it helpful or it also has the dangers to be used against of minor nations or minor, I don't know, the nations which seek emancipation or seek independence, and being used against of them? Don't you see this danger?
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Natalia, for your question. It's quite important. I think that ethnophiletism, or in other words, nationalism, ecclesiastical nationalism, is the most dangerous, let's say, threat in our church, in our Orthodox Church. In any case, we need to condemn it as a heresy. It goes without saying. At the same time, however, in the case of the Ukraine autocephalous church, there was an actual pastoral problem there. The Ukraine people would like to have intercommunion with the other Orthodox churches. That's why they appeal to the ecumenical patriarchate to give them the autocephaly. We all know that the Orthodox churches, after the Ottoman Empire fall, they used to follow very close nationalistic ideology in order to become autocephalous or to declare the status of patriarchates. This is something that we need to take into consideration when we're speaking about Orthodox ecclesiology in the future. It is a problem, there is a problem, the connection between autocephalous churches and ethnophiletism, but I think that this is not the case with the granting the autocephaly to Ukraine church at the moment that there are a part of the Ukrainian people that belong to another jurisdiction. So there is a connection, but you cannot say that it is totally, it is closely connected.
Thank you. Next question, Дмитро.
Якщо можна, то через перекладача мені так зручніше, а скористаємося перекладачем. То таке питання коротке, але мені важливе, мені здається, для конференції важливе. чи в Греції і серед грецьких богословів є таке тверде розуміння, що російський мір – це єресь сучасна. Як казав Кирил Говорун, не етнофілітизм, а як це слово? Культурний філітизм, як ціла не культура, якось він забув, вилетіло з голови. Це перше питання. Тобто, чи русський мір – це єресь серед грецьких богословів, це чітко розуміють чи ні? І друге, це чи є десь дослідження, що русський мір – догматичний генезис руського міра? Тобто, що воно під собою як базис генезу має в вимірі догматики? Звідки воно пішло, як воно еволюціонувало, і чи десь це може, десь є такі спеціалісти, і що пан доповідач думає за це? Дякую.
Thank you, Father Dimitro. Actually, the majority of the people, not only the experts, but the majority of the Greek people do not understand what is the meaning of russkий мир. More or less, they don't care about the whole situation now. They only care about the cost of their lives, not about the actual ecclesiastical problem or the ideological problem that it is at the background of this Russian invasion. I would say that 40% of the Greek people, which is unimaginable for a country that belongs to the European Union and the Western world, are pro-Putin. This is something that drives me crazy. So I think that it is Greek people is a peculiar situation because they always believe to the blunt, let's say, nation from Russia that will help and support them during the Greek independence war and so on. But nothing of this had happened at all. It is on the hands of the theologians, and especially the liberal theologians, to try to explain the ecclesiastical theological background and ideological background of this war, and convince the people that this is not about, let's say, how to say, about a war of an Orthodox people against a schismatic one or against a heretic one, but it's a war between the two Orthodox people. At an unholy war, there is no holy war in Greek tradition, in Orthodox tradition. So it is our duty to convince them how to understand the real meaning of the Russian world. At the moment, there are no special, let's say, works or articles or essays on the topic. It is almost a new one in terms of publicity. But we need to spend some more time in discussing and studying this in the future.
Thank you. Next question, Paolo.
Thank you very much. I'm Father Paolo from the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Can you just say a couple of words to this perhaps naive of the Patriarchate of Jerusalem to join the rest of the Rum Orthodox in recognizing and the autocephaly of the Orthodox Church of Ukraine?
If I understand if I understand your question well, it is about why the Jerusalem Patriarchate did not join the recognition of the Ukrainian autocephaly.
The rest of the room, let's say, called the Rum Orthodoxy.
I think it is only about politics. It's clearly about politics. It's clearly about the money. You all know that the Moscow Patriarchate gives a lot of money to many churches in Middle East and other areas. So that is the main reason that many Greek Orthodox churches do not follow the Ecumenical Patriarchate in this regard. it is clear we need to speak out the truth clearly and sound.